place
I'm
where you
sorry.
can talk about, is this something that we know, or is it hidden?
I guess I listened to the recording from last week in terms of the questions, and that really struck a chord with me. And it continues to strike the chord in terms of conscious and subconscious, because I've always kind of questioned. There was a point that I did feel secure in the Catholic Church. I was a very young person at that point. And once I started questioning, and the insecurity of questioning, although there was a rightness of it that I felt like was coming from someplace within me, that relates to the conscious and the unconscious piece. It's like there was something that was there all along. And in I guess as I aged, I felt more comfortable with the questioning and the seeking on my own rather than listening to a priest or you know a mentor or whatever.
So, Anne, it sounds like you were able to trust that doubting.
I think so. I don't think that it was, I don't think I didn't trust it, Tilly. And the more that I questioned, and this goes back to my early 20s, and I think it's because I'm such a strong woman, which who knows where I got that, probably from my father, um, ironically, but and his total acceptance of me. I just knew that what the church was putting forward was not the real message of Jesus. And I just kept going with it. It wasn't, I wasn't always seeking. Could be that I stepped out of the church or stepped out of worship or whatever. I don't know, I'd have maybe even prayer. But then once I opened up to accepting all of the questions and knowing that I was on the right path, questioning, I just kept going. It isn't that I ever found it. And even as I listened to you all this morning from last week, I was thinking some of it is the questioning what is the truth of your heart, and how, and even now reading this paragraph, thinking, wait a minute, now I just lost the thought. Thinking that part within us that carries the divinity of Jesus and God, that's where the subconscious comes in to me. Thinking that's the piece that pulls me. For me, it doesn't, I don't think it's the same for everybody, but for me, it pulls me in that direction. And that kind of makes me say, I need to do this, in terms of social justice, or helping another person. I don't know. I obviously still have a bunch of questions, but I'm sorting it through. And listen, it was fun. It was so great to listen to you all this morning because I didn't have time to do it before. And that conversation that you all had last week in terms of the questions. And it's different for everybody, I think. So I'll shut up for right now.
Actually, I think from my experience, the more I get into the deeper aspects of it, the hidden or whatever, looking down below, going deeper, helps me make sense of what on the surface oftentimes does not make sense or doesn't feel relevant. But the deeper through these conversations and reading Cynthia and being with Bill and starting to spend more time in this world of depth, I can go back and I can look at more of the canonical gospels, and there's more relevance there, which then makes it easier to carry into daily life.
Mhm. I agree with that, Pat.
It also has given me the freedom to look at some of the hidden subconscious aspects of myself and do some work there.
I'm feeling really pushed to I don't know why, so maybe it'll ring a bell somewhere, maybe in me. But I did a sermon in church a bunch of years ago, and I guess the gospel was about the raising of Lazarus. And what really came to mind was a young woman who was living with us off and on at the time, who was really had a very traumatic past and was trying to deal with that. So we all know the story of Lazarus who fell ill and died, and Jesus wasn't there. And he came back, and Lazarus had been in the tomb for 3 days. And Jesus called him out. And I don't want to argue that stuff. We know the story. And Jesus yelled out, so Lazarus came out, and Jesus said to the people around, this is the part that really struck me then, unbind him and let him go. And that so struck me with this young woman who was with us. But it continues to ring a bell with me that a lot of our responsibilities to other people who are so bound up for whatever reason and sort of dead inside, to be part of the unbinding, part of offering them through our compassionate life and words and actions, something that will allow them to come into fuller life again. That's one of those stories that has a big, for me, a huge meaning behind the surface story. Surface story is take off all those wraps that they rolled him up in when they put him in the tomb.
That's a great example.
That's kind of connected to what we see at the end of this paragraph. The church originally staked a claim, so to speak, on the entire territory of Christianity, fencing in a land that was originally open and free. And what you're talking about when you talk about unbind him is free him.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, since we've touched on and have gone around a bit on conscious and subconscious, shall we move to the next paragraph?
Would you like for me to read it? Because I was beginning to do that.
Yes, please, Tilly.
We might also think of the subconscious and the conscious as essence and manifestation, what we are in the depths of our hidden being, and how we act and manifest in the conditioned and relative realm of time and the world we live in. It might also be suggested that in our own individual lives, as well as in the life of a great tradition that compassionately struggles to penetrate the worldly life of humankind, essence, and manifestation, often drift apart from each other to the point that outer expression or manifestation loses or forgets its source and essence, and thereby,
Yeah, and thereby here.
and thereby knowingly or unknowingly even contradicts or denies the authority of its source. In that case, to confront essence and manifestation together, especially in their accrued mutual contradiction, is nothing less than a great shock of awakening. And it is there where we may experience the state of self-questioning that is both joyous and bittersweet. And I have to say this, Marianne, the thing that I read that made me think of what you said is, or forgets its source and essence. You know, that you forgot why you had that fear. You forgot, you didn't remember that experience. And so, is that something that's being talked about here?
Well, what you said, Tilly, is part of the practice in centering prayer. When that was in the unconscious comes up to the conscious, for Thomas Keating, it was a way of healing. It already popped up.
Well, it's interesting that you mention that, because I can remember a session when I was doing centering prayer, and a person came to my mind, and I decided that I needed to act on it, because in a different centering prayer environment, that individual came to me again. And I kind of thought, oh, I need to pay attention to this. And as it turned out, this woman's husband was in the hospital with cancer.
Mm.
And I knew then that I did need to pay attention.
Mm-hmm. And this was you, the pastor, not you, the banker.
Right. Marianne, I'm curious how you respond to my talking about the idea of forgetting.
Yeah, this is really dense, because we could come at it so many different ways. Psychologically, spiritually, they take a different emphasis. So I think forgetting is relevant to both, though here in this context, the drifting apart from each other of, let's say, the canonical gospels and these texts have so much to do with power and the abuse of power, that it takes it in a different direction, or expands the context. Just a few thoughts.
Well, Jesus was absolutely with part of the powerless. And the hierarchical church is so full of power structures.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose we could say it's then convenient for the institution to forget Jesus's emphasis. There's
Which,
a
oh, by the
motivated.
way, I think is what has happened.
That is why Carolyn Mays used to say that we are in a moment where the love of power is shifting to the power of love.
I certainly think that's where the wisdom way is working to have its power. When we are transformed as human people, so that the work in us lets us become loving people, because that becomes who we are, rather than the imposed dictate of the church that says you must go out and do some kind of ministry, so why don't you go down to the local soup kitchen and make sandwiches? That's good, and it's good to feed people, but there's a big difference between having an open heart and just making sandwiches, even though that may be really necessary.
So do you think from what I'm hearing, do you think there are times that our essence or the hidden being comes up through all of the barricades that manifestation puts around us? And those are the little voices that we hear sometimes that tell us, reach out to so-and-so or do this or whatever.
What you make me think of, Pat, is a teaching of Carolyn Mace that Cornelia no doubt has heard. So these texts, these hidden texts, are found within a year of the unleashing of the atomic bomb, which she suggests is not an accident. And it's sort of an interesting way of playing with your question on this level, you know?
Well, another example, Mary Ann, is the great people who have made changes in our life, our world, like Einstein, these Galileo, Newton, all of these, people have some point in time have come and evolved that has changed the world as we know it. And I've always been fascinated by, so why was this person here on this earth at this particular time and place? And why did we move from the Iron Age into or before the Iron Age, whatever it was, but each age, oh my God, my brain isn't working today, into now we're in the technology age, and who's going to show up that's going to shift that into something else? I've always been fascinated by looking at all the key people that seem to have had a major influence, and why were they here at that time?
Kairos. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
I love it, Tilly.
But that's also the reality of our lives. Each of us is here at this particular moment in time, called to be something that will matter. And it may only matter to our neighbor. but each of us has a role to play, I know, concretely and hugely. Way back when, trying to think how old I was, probably in my early 30s, and misery in my first marriage, and sort of screaming to God, but very fervent in doing times of prayer. It was the only thing that kept me semi-sane. There was this moment one day that totally caught me off base, which was that I knew in that moment that I mattered and had something to do. I mean, my life mattered in terms of the entirety of the universe. I mean, I knew that. I knew it really deeply. Now, the moment went away and life went on and life was awful. And I many times came back to remembering that I had had that deep experience, but it was just a memory. But I would say in the last few years, I don't understand the meaning of that anymore, the meaning of it. But I feel absolutely, again, convinced that each of us matters in terms of the entirety of the universe. And I don't, is it our prayer that's helping shape the unfolding? Many of our deeply spiritual writers will say that we're part of the unfolding. We don't know how to pray specifically for tomorrow, but our prayer is enabling things to happen for justice and goodness and peace and love and charity, even though we may not really see it, but we matter. That's our vocation.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because when I was released from the hospital, we got a phone call warning us that we had to boil our water. And it just irritated my husband to no end. And so he called the newspaper and said, I can't get any information from the township. They won't tell us when we can stop boiling water. And I don't know if everybody in our neighborhood knows that there's a boil water in effect. And he wound up talking to this reporter who then wrote an article in the newspaper. And he then had me walk with him, and we put notices in people's mailboxes about the township having a meeting about this issue about our boil water situation. And he felt pretty proud of himself by being this activist of some sort. And so then yesterday, the newspaper sent a photographer. So Jamie was very pleased that he got to get his picture in the paper. We haven't seen it yet, but but I do think that's what you're talking about, Barbara.
I mean, it could be very specific like that, and it could be the fact that somebody else's prayer was the motivating factor for Jamie, who didn't even know there was a motivating factor that got him up doing it.
Well, and I don't know if he felt this way, but for me, it was like, I can't believe I'm just coming home from the hospital and now we have to boil water.
Yeah.
Surrender to the now, because that's where you are.
Okay, are we ready for the next one?
I wanted to share some words of Cynthia, because this part of in the paragraph where it says the shock of awakening at the end of the paragraph, and it is there where we may experience the state of self-questioning that is both joyous and bittersweet. And Cynthia, in her talk about second body and how do we get to second body. She says we need struggle to get to second body. And she says we must be suffering because this being impulse can come to full manifestation in us only through the constant struggle between two quite opposite complexes of functioning issuing from two sources of quite opposite origin, namely between the processes of the functioning of our planetary body and the parallel processes of the functioning and progressive coding of our higher being bodies within this planetary body of ours. And so she says, suffering is because it says at the end, and a state of self-questioning of both joyous and bittersweet. We need to experience that in order to find that resurrected body.
Can you send that quote out to us, please, Cornelia?
Yes.
I have a question, and I'm sorry, probably I am not. What is the meaning of second body that Cindy is talking about? What is the meaning?
Second body is, it's, let's say like level. Another name for the second body is the kingdom of heaven. So in order to get it, because the secret in these teachings is to get to that kingdom of heaven. And in that kingdom of heaven, let's say it's a construction of a second body. It's a resurrected body, but we need struggle in order to get from one point to the other.
Anyway,
It's
okay.
Can we compare that to being asleep and being awake, Cornelia?
It can be, it can be, but also
I'm impressed that she can put her hand on something.
I know.
Oh my.
and she talks about the world 48 and the world 24, but I'm going to give you, let me see, get out, find it here.
Cornelia, what book is that in?
In the Eye of the Heart, it says, what is the second body? The second body is a body where there's spatial time, synchronous causality, non-duality, fluid and permeable boundaries, holographic selfhood, conscious, counter-entropic, radial, generative energy, subtle inner body, virtue, and operative energy. It's a body that has less loss than the world 48 that we live in, which is linear. The other one is not linear. But to build second body, because the second body is the place where the fruits of the spirit are released, are there to release to the world. But we need to prepare the bodies here on earth.
I just I read the book and I did the training, and at the end it is very confusing, all the material, because we are talking at different realms.
Yeah.
And we are talking about just the human realm to a spiritual realm. And she used a very unique language.
Yeah.
And I said different language that in other traditions are called unity, and going to the higher intelligence. And that is just the way that I assimilate, okay? At this moment, I decided to stop reading her because I was in a training that was teaching me all this stuff in more simple way, more, and I got the same message. Okay, in the next few months, I'm planning to go back and take all the Cynthia's work and put just together. But just when you go through all your ego stuff and you open your spiritual kind of being inside of you, you are opening in your mind. Your mind physically is changing, okay? And takes a lot of time. And when that change happens, you are what Cynthia called the second body. You are connected to the force of the light of God in your life, and that is called the higher intelligence. It's something that you Einstein knew it, and all the people who make a lot of great work, they got it. They know that over there is the knowledge, and the only thing you need is to be in silence and trust and be there. But you need to prepare, and we center in prayer and all our spiritual exercise. We are just getting there. We are not Einstein. And the only thing I have learned just in my yoga training is that you are part of God. You are part of God. And that it has the trust and the energy go through you. And then through you and through all the chakras manifest and change. And God is through you. And in Christianity is Christ. And it's Christ. It's what we call Christ. We are the body of Christ. I'm sorry for but I mean, sometimes I feel it's the language is so that it's simple. Simple. It's more simple. Okay.
This
Anyway,
is
I'm sorry for and the others. When I read all this stuff, I mean, I know that just when we read this Phillip gospel, will be very shocking for us because it's like I feel like we are planning to open like when
Pandora.
you have a pot, a pressure pot with a lot of things, we are planning to do it, and we will be shocking. When we be able to understand what is here, and he is. I mean, I don't know. Just imagine that he did not make a commentary of the book, because if he make a commentary of the book, would be shocking. Okay, so he's just giving us, just take whatever you are able to get it. And that is just the thing I am open right now with this book. Anyway.
And
I'm sorry.
sometimes, Josefina,
I just wanted to share two quotes. One from Rafe, that was Cynthia's friend, that he said to her, "You have to find something in yourself that already lives beyond death and begin to live by it now." And the other one comes from Nichols, which is, "The man who has reached a stage in which he has something independent of outer conditions, something which is independent of failure or success, cold, heat, discomfort or comfort, starvation or plenty, such a man has second body." And second body for Cynthia was Jesus when he, in the resurrected body, where he could go through walls. He was already dead for the people, but he appeared to the disciples in the moment where he crossed the wall and he was there. And suddenly he said, I am hungry. And they gave him fish. So that is the body, let's say, that we're constructing. But what caught my attention was this part of it is there where we may experience the state of self-questioning that is both joyous and bittersweet. So it's both.
And the other thing is, some of this cannot be experienced, processed, learned, whatever you want to use it there, with your brain.
Right.
Sometimes you have to let the brain go, let go of knowing, and go with the embodiment that you feel.
And that would be the gut brain
Yes.
or the heart brain. Let's allow three brains. It's the head brain that wants to dominate. But you're right, Pat.
Yeah.
You know, and I've heard that so many times when I was going through 9 gates, because I'm writing and taking notes like crazy because my auditory retention isn't good. And I'm trying to understand this. And Deborah would lean over and put her hand on my knee and said, you can't use your brain. Just feel it.
You know, this makes me think
And when
about,
I surrendered to that, I would get it.
Listen with your heart.
this makes me think about the experience that I had of my mother. I was being very intentional about walking softly on the earth. So I really was connected to my body. And it was in that time that my mother came to me from death.
Yes.
And I'm really grateful that she did. Because she acknowledged to me that she knew what I had been trying to do when my father was dying. Was that I knew that my dad did not want to be resuscitated. And she kept telling the hospital to do that. And it was terribly upsetting to me because I knew that was not what my father wanted. And she acknowledged that she knew that that was what I was doing in that moment when my father was dying. But then the other thing that she acknowledged was that she knew that my nephew was gay. And she was okay with that. And I was so grateful because, you know, he got married at the beginning of April. We just don't know why things happen, do we?
No,
No.
not at all.
Mhm.
Well, it's 3:10. Shall we do, it looks like this next paragraph is going to kind of wrap this up.
Well, I will tell you this. My husband has plans for dinner for me tonight. So I need to exit.
We will
Bye,
miss
Tilly.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yes. Happy birthday, Tilly.
Thank
Happy
you so much.
birthday.
Happy birthday.
Take care,
Enjoy.
guys.
Enjoy.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a lovely, lovely dinner.
Thank you.
Okay, Cornelia, would you read the next paragraph? I think this kind of summarizes what we've been talking about a little bit.
In this sense, speaking in terms of gnosis or sacred knowing, a genuine question that corresponds to a state of spiritual need, involves the experience in ourselves of our own essential being together with our actual manifestation. It means being present to both the divine essence within and how we manifest or act in ways that generally serve only the illusions and attachments of the ego. There can be great suffering in this awareness of how we forget or betray the truth of what we are. But this awareness itself, when it is deep enough, opens the way to a reconciliation of these two opposing currents in ourselves. And this awareness can lead us toward the peace that passes understanding. Here, knowledge and love fuse. Beautiful.
If I could share an experience that kind of this this really just brought it right to the surface. At Nine Gates, we had done a beautiful Buddhist healing ceremony, and my room was within visual distance of the fire that was there, and so after it was over, I went back and went to bed and didn't think too much about it. And then about 2:30 or 3 in the morning, I woke up and there was this joy inside of me I have never experienced. I mean, it filled my entire physical body and was dancing and jumping for joy and singing. And I'm laying there with all of this going on, trying to figure out what the heck was going on. And I laid there till it was time to get up 6:30 in the morning. I couldn't go back to sleep. I wanted to. There was no way it was going to happen. And I got up, and this sense of joy and ecstasy continued all day long. And after I got home, it was still present. And what I realized was that for the first time, my heart had opened up and my brain was in the background. And that, because I've always been a very left brain oriented person. And this shift was unbelievable. And for the first time, my heart led the way. And the thinking, analyzing, knowing part of me was in the background. And every day she was present and was like a guide. And then she was there for a good year. And then I did esoteric Christianity with Nine Gates. And I noticed that after that program, that my presence merged with my brain, and they became one and worked together instead of against one another. Her voice is not strong. I don't hear her voice and feel her presence strongly, but I definitely felt new that they came together and have continued to work as one. And that sense of that divine essence that awoke was absolutely amazing. And yet, on the other hand, the left brain's part of me did not fight it. It welcomed it. And that was the point at which I could live from my heart instead of my head. And this speaks to that so well. Knowledge and love fused.
Knowledge being the head,
Yes.
or the left brain in your case.
Yeah.
For me, it's a constant ongoing dance. I maybe I'll be surprised by that kind of experience that you've had, Pat. But for me, it just feels like they're dancing with each other. But I have to keep reminding knowledge of its place. That it doesn't always get to lead.
Uh-huh. That surrender to it's okay to not know is an interesting dance.
I should get ready to leave for that physical therapy appointment because I'm worried that a handyman, that his truck is in my way and I'm going to need to ask him to move it. So I will check out now and look forward to being with you next week.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Bye, Marianne. Good to be with you
Bye.
today.
Yeah. Have wonderful travels, Pat.
Thank you.
Bye.
Where are you going, Pat?
I'm going to Lucerne Valley, California, which is about 2 hours northeast of LA San Bernardino, staffing a part 2 of Nine Gates Mystery School. And so we'll be gone from the 19th to the 31st. And it's beautiful. This our Royal Way Ranch is where we're staying, and it's like an oasis on the side of a small quote mountain in the middle of high desert.
Oh, wow.
They have orchards, they grow their own food, they have these beautiful shrubs and plants that are blooming. It's just incredibly beautiful place. And what's really special about this is where I started 6 years ago for my part 1. And my girlfriend who did it with me is staffing also. And so we get to share a Jack and Jill suite like we did before.
Oh, good.
So it's just kind of neat the way it's falling together.
I suggest we stop. We've lost 2 people. If Roll gets home, I need to leave immediately to go get my hair cut. So I'm sort of thinking ahead the little things I need to do before I walk out. So I think it would be a good time to finish.
All righty.
And I thank everybody. This is so exciting for me.
It's very rich.
It is. Wait, I
And
love
I'm looking forward to when we get back to Philip, the actual Philip, but this is when I read this part of the book, the foreword and introduction before we started Philip, this is what I really enjoyed. So I'm very happy and grateful that we're doing it this way.
Well, yes, and I read it and I read it.
Yes,
Read it.
right.
And
That was your
doing
left
this,
brain, Pat.
I'm
That was your left brain.
it was. And this is so nice because taking it slow like this
Right.
can actually get underneath it,
Right.
which is fantastic. I'm really enjoying this.
And Cornelia, would you send us those quotes that you shared?
Yes,
Or, yeah,
yes.
the pages or whatever that in
No.
that book.
No, okay, in the book, but the other one is I just copied it by hand, so I'll just type it.
Thank you.
All
Yeah.
righty.
Then we can meditate on that.
Yes.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you all. This is
Yeah,
just, it's so
thank
good.
you.
I missed you so last week, and this next 2 weeks, at least I'm going to be busy, so, but I'm still going to miss you.
I know it's hard when we're not here.
Yeah, it really is. So
Yeah.
look forward to seeing you in November.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, Josefina.
Bye.